You see all the van life photos, you watch all the van tours, but do you wonder what this nomadic lifestyle is all about? Are you curious about life on the road? Social media calls it #vanlife. We call it home. I'll ask 10 questions to get you the stories that you want to hear from the people who live, work, and travel and adventure in this nomadic lifestyle. Welcome to Life on the Road. You ready?
Yeah.
Perfect. Welcome to another episode of Life on the Road, where I ask 10 questions to get you the stories you want to hear from her life on the road. Welcome.
Hi.
How are you, Sammie?
Good. How are you?
I'm amazing.
Great.
Thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Appreciate your time. And we're in front of your beautiful rig.
This is my rig.
Which we'll talk about eventually.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously we're in a beautiful environment here in Arizona, so this is perfect.
Yeah.
So thank you for doing this.
You bet.
As we always start on the show, tell us who you are, where you're from, and how long you've been living on the road. And then somewhere in between all that, you can shamelessly promote yourself.
Oh, I didn't prepare that. Okay.
Share whatever you want.
My name is Sammie McGowan. I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, but most recently I would say I'm from Montana. That's where my license plate and my driver's license have the state on.
Definitely not a prerequisite.
Right, exactly.
To be from,
100%. That's where I've lived the longest most recently.
Okay, that makes sense.
And that's where I go back to most recently.
Mine is Washington and Utah, and I live in neither of those. So, but
Yeah.
yes, I understand.
And I've started living in my camper last year in August, so it's been just over, so it's like, what, a year and 3 months?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, 4 months, 3 months, yeah.
Full-time.
Full-time, 100%, yeah.
Nice, very cool. So you're calling Montana home. That's
It is, yeah. I lived there for solid 3 years before moving in my rig, and then I spend my winters down in sunny, warm climates. And
We're
then
in Arizona currently.
Yeah, so clearly it's December, whatever, middle of December, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I'm in a tank top.
Yeah,
so.
we're not in Montana.
Yeah,
obviously.
it's currently like 7 degrees where I am living.
Where you're from.
Yeah, and so then I spend my summers back in Montana. As of right now, that's the current situation.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Nice. And then where can people find you? Do you want to even promote your Instagram?
Sure. My Instagram is at Samantha McGowan, McGowan.
Nice. We'll have it down below you.
Yeah, so
it'll be
you can find me there if you care.
Nice. Time to learn about your life on the road.
Sure.
Question one, what was the beginning moment, cause, or inspiration to live your life on the road?
So I worked seasonally for a while, so seasonal life tends to kind of coincide with a lot of like nomadic travelers.
Sure.
So I had been friends with a lot of, nomadic people, van lifers, and kind of in the back of my head always had it as like an option and like thought I could see myself in that life. But what really like was the exact moment.
When was that you were?
Oh, that was
like time-wise.
So I graduated from college and was in a 9-to-5 job in DC for 2 years.
Okay.
And then I started working seasonally in 2015.
Okay, so
and did that for 4 years.
So for a while you're being exposed to others that are living this lifestyle.
And I really kind of was living nomadically because I only lived in a place for 6 months at a time.
Sure.
Or less. And then when I wasn't working in Alaska in the summers, I was traveling.
Okay.
So I technically was nomadic for 4 years.
Yeah, very much so.
And then I would live out of my car in between places. So I wasn't living in a camper or anything, but I had a little CRV that I made my bed in the back. And
absolutely, that is defined as nomadic travel.
Yeah.
A nomadic traveler for sure.
So I did that for 4 summers.
Okay.
And then in the winters, I would either move to a new town and live there for the winter, or I would travel.
Okay.
So I backpacked through Europe and Asia one winter. I backpacked through South America one winter. So
So we would highlight, you've been on the road much longer than your year and 3 months.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
That we're going to define in the rig.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I completely define backpack travel and car life and whatever you want to call it as a nomadic traveler.
True. So like by the time I like told people I was doing this, they were like, yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
Like it wasn't a surprise at all.
Yeah. This was building for many years.
In fact, my mom was like, oh, you'll be safer because there's a lock on the door.
There you go, Mom. Like super supportive of this concept, which I love.
Yeah,
like,
as opposed to like me living out of a 40-liter backpack in Europe and Asia and like traveling from hostel to hostel or like, or even less than that sometimes. So
that's an amazing comment. Good job, Mom. Yeah, it's awesome. You'll be safer. I love this idea. It's perfect. Well, speaking of that and your travels, question 2 is what has been your experience with other nomadic travelers living your life on the road?
It's been interesting. So I've passed my 1 year of like in this rig. My first year, I was incredibly reclusive. I was definitely a loner. I only really made like 2 van life friends on the road.
Okay. Can I ask why?
I think it was a mixture of things. So right before I moved into my van, I had a falling out with a family member, and I think that affected me a lot more than I maybe like let myself believe it did. Okay. And so I think I was just like emotionally like unavailable. And furthermore, like, I don't know, like on social media, van life can be also portrayed as this like crazy like party, and I'm not a partier. I much prefer like hiking and reading and like really chill campfires and like people who know themselves. I don't know, and van life is not portrayed like that, and that's like I feel like a lot of people get into van life for that like portrayal and that expectation, and I was like the exact opposite. Like I was like, I don't want any of that, and so I was really reticent to like I guess connect with people because I was afraid I'd be like put into a situation where I like didn't feel comfortable.
Yeah, I get it. That makes perfect sense.
And even when I did like the best times I've had with like van lifers is when I've known one person and they've known more people and they've like brought them into us. So like currently we're in a situation where there's like 8 van lifers right now like on this road, and this is probably this. First of all, is the biggest like gathering I've ever had. Okay. And 2 is the best like I could have expected from a large gathering. Okay. And this is probably like a baby gathering compared to like some other things, which it is, and I'm aware like moon landing and you know,
descend and
and all that, and that to me sounds like really terrible.
So, I mean, I will say, and that's amazing. First of all, like kudos to, you know, again, experiencing something like this. Because again, it's one, a beautiful setting. 2, these are incredible people that are here. And so I'm glad you feel very good here. And this is good for you. Yeah. I will say, as somebody who's been to those big gatherings, you know, Descend, and actually Sloan and I had a little conversation about this, is like, this community is so wonderful in a sense that like if you're the type of person that wants to just go sit in the van and doesn't want to party or, you know, be a part of the large gathering, you 100% can do that. And like no one's going to be like, oh, who is this girl sitting in her rig all day? Like, no, everybody like respects the fact that this is who she is or this is where she wants to spend her time, and that's okay. And she's going to come out and enjoy us when she's comfortable and wants to. And so I will say those events are, you know, have that kind of accepting nature in them. And so, you know, and again, it's a comfort level. So I totally can see that being, if it's not your style, it's not your style.
And also I like feel like I connect better with people like one-on-one or one-on-two in really small groups. And so I like to meet people in that situation. So then you actually get to know people before you're like thrown, like I don't like going into a big group and not knowing anyone because like then it's a group type of setting and you don't actually get to know people super well. And so this has been really great for that too.
I will say, and again, I'll use Descend as the example, you know, with the kind of creation and how Descend works with the circles. I was very skeptical pre-Descend this year for the first time. And, you know, I was like, oh, that sounds like super, like, kind of cliquey and super weird. Like, why? Doesn't seem very inclusive, you know, those types of things. Yeah. And then, you know, kudos to the Good Vibes and shout out to Chris and Matt for kind of creating this wonderful environment within Descend that was fairly large. You know, we had a pretty large circle of of individuals, but the way everything kind of was created with the individuals that were around us, Rich and Heather were there, and it was those moments and opportunities where you could just go one-on-one with a bunch of different people and really start to get to know them.
Yeah.
And then you started to feel much better as a whole, as a little mini community, because ultimately that's what kind of we created. And then you're a part of this bigger community of Descend, which was, it ended up being like just a really cool vibe. Yeah. So I want to express that those opportunities are there.
And I think I'd be more comfortable now, like if I knew someone there and, like just like at least I'd have like a buddy.
Yeah. Well, and that's again why, Crystal and Rich and Heather were like, hey, we're going to go in with the Descend group because we kind of feel comfortable with these individuals. Yeah. And then eventually, you start to meet more and more and more. And so that makes perfect sense. So, and again, it's personal to you. It's your experience, to where obviously, the emotional readiness wasn't quite present or there as you got into the van. And, you've been living your life, getting used to life on the road. Sometimes it just takes time.
Yeah. So. Plus I was working full time, which we'll talk about later. Yeah. But like that to me too is like there's a lot less time to like be out there and just like meet people. You're like, I have to be in meetings. I have to be at work at like 40 hours a week. So it's like 2 days a week, and like one of those days is usually my chill day. And so it doesn't leave a ton of room sometimes to like put yourself out there and meet new people. Yeah,
and it sounds like your chill day you would much prefer to spend hiking or reading or kind of alone in nature. So that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Question number 3, what has been your biggest failure and what has been your biggest triumph while living on your life on the road?
So my biggest triumph, I think, is this lifestyle in general. And so the reason I ended up moving into my vehicle, or I should say I didn't even own it then when I had this realization, but I was working full-time in Montana. At the time I was working as a teacher, an outdoor teacher, so we were outside like 100% of the time in the summer and 80% of the time in the winter. And one of the reasons I took that job is because I really wanted to be outside the majority of the year because in northwest Montana where I lived was like cloudy, like 95% of the time in the winter. Yeah.
Interesting.
It's like, it doesn't always get that cold. It's not even that snowy sometimes, but like the cloud cover is oppressive. And I didn't know that.
Somebody who's lived in Seattle for 4 years, I understand.
Yeah. And I didn't know that I would be affected by that. I'd never lived in somewhere in the winter where it was cloudy like that. And so like the first winter I was like, that was kind of hard. And the second winter I was like, this is awful. And then the third winter, it was that winter that I was like working outside and so that I could be outside if it ever did get sunny. And that still wasn't enough. So it was like mid-January, we were like cleaning up at the end of the day. I was like in my like snowboarding gear for work. And I like turned to my boss and was like, I'm not going to be here next winter. And I was like, I don't know where I'm going to be. I don't know what job I'm going to have. I don't know like how I'm going to live there, but I will not be here. And it was like that moment of like just following my intuition. It was just this like split second. I know what I need and it's not this. And so from that moment on, I started looking at rigs. And so
did you kind of have this in the back of your head as you've kind of said that out loud?
No, I had absolutely no idea what I was going to do.
You just know you needed a change.
Yeah, and so it was an option. Like another option would be to like get a 6-month lease there and go back and forth. And like, so it really was just like, I can't be here. And all the options needed to come together. And so that was I think my biggest triumph is that like I allowed myself to like uproot my life that I had created and like knew I needed something else and make it happen no matter what.
You ultimately gave yourself the space to discover kind of this end, or not even end, this beginning, or opportunity. Because there were definitely opportunities or ways you could have gone kind of from that moment. So very nice. So triumph of just living on the road. I love it. And then your biggest failure?
I think my failures have been like small things that have been like mistakes. Like, I don't know if you can see it in this shot, but there's a taped up window.
There is.
And that just happened recently. And it was a funny story. I like went down an awful road and it wasn't even like I'm really gingerly gingerly with my vehicle because it's older, as you can see, and it's my home, so I need to be careful. So I won't like go down a shitty road. I just like will not.
Okay.
And so this was actually for my full-time job. We had a like retreat, and it was like a camping retreat, and I was like, well, I got a rig, so it's perfect. I don't need to be in the tent.
Fine.
Yeah, and this road was like 15 miles long, and it was awful, like so, and it was raining the whole time, and it was just like whatever. So my windows, there's arms that push them out, and then whatever. So those arms broke on this window on this trip, and I kept forgetting on the way back to tape it up.
Yeah.
And so as I'm like driving from Montana to Utah, I remember somewhere in Idaho, I'm like, oh crap, I need to tape that window. And so I stop at a Walmart to get tape, and I was like, oh, well, I also can fill up my gas, and I can also get lunch, and I can also do this. So I was like trying to do everything. So I like got lunch, filled up my gas, and like went into my car and ate my lunch. And I was like, great, let's get back on the road. And then I was like halfway through, and I was like, oh man, I forgot to tape up my window, because it was flying open as I was driving. And I got to Salt Lake City, and it was gone.
Like completely gone?
Gone. Like there was just the screen left.
We're gonna back up like 3 steps in the story. At some point, post lunch, pre-destination of Salt Lake City,
I realized.
You didn't realize that the window?
I did realize it was not
out?
taped. I had not realized. So I had this moment
But you never realized, obviously, it was gone.
Nope. Never realized it was gone.
That is amazing.
And what I should have done, so this is like my failure where I'm like, oh, it'll be fine. Like in my head, I'm like, oh, like it's lasted this long. It can last for another hour.
Whoops.
It did not.
It did not obviously last. And it actually didn't just continue to flop around. It just decided to go away.
It took it off its own hinges. And I can only hope that I was in the right lane so that it didn't hit someone's car.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, who knows where that window is?
Who knows
it's
what
somewhere
chaos
near,
I caused.
Is it near like, you're going toward Park City, so somewhere near Boise, between Boise and Park City?
It's between Idaho Falls and Salt Lake City.
There we go. So
somewhere.
If you see a window.
I'm really sorry if it hit you.
If you see a window on the side of the road.
Shattered.
Yeah. Gone.
Probably mine.
Yeah, it's probably yours.
And then there's just like another small thing. I like backed up into something that was too low, and I like tore off the corner of my camper, and so that's been fixed with like putty, and I don't know. So it's just all these like small things. It's like a learning curve that's been like in the scheme of like van life, not that big, but like kind of.
No, I mean, and again, it happens and gets talked about. Come here, you little silly monkey. Come here. Oh my goodness.
This is my son, Charlie.
Hello.
He's a very important part of this story.
Yes, exactly. He can sit right here.
He's going to try to crawl on this.
That's okay. He can crawl on this.
It's not too heavy.
No, you're totally fine in there, buddy. You can just lay down.
Hi, bubs.
There you go.
Hi.
No, I think it's important to talk about because, again, more often than not, in the conversations on this show, all the failures that get discussed or even spoken about aren't really failures at the end of the day. They're learning experiences.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's how everybody has treated them. It's how they all get talked about. And so, you now know that
I need to fix things the moment I notice them.
Yeah.
And I actually did do that recently. Like one of my, because this is a pop-up camper, and one of the like brackets was loose to like that clamps it down.
Yeah.
And I fixed it right away.
There you go.
So who knows what chaos could have ensued from that, and I didn't let it happen.
Yes.
So I learned from my mistakes.
There you go. That's perfect. Question number 4. Did you start your life as a single person? And what is it like living your life on the road as a single person?
I did start it as a single person, and I'm still a single person. And honestly, I cannot imagine doing this with a partner. Like, it like sounds awful. Maybe it's specifically because of this rig.
Sure.
Like I feel like I fit perfectly in here with Charlie.
Yeah.
But with like another person.
Obviously, Charlie's not taking up a ton of space.
No, he's very small.
Exactly.
And so I just like can't imagine possibly doing this especially like working full time and someone else possibly working full time. It would just be such tight quarters.
Yeah, it's tough.
Like the only thing I can imagine would be like they have their own rig.
It gets talked about a lot. Like when we talk about relationships on the road, or we talk about like single life on the road, like that's pretty much like everybody's like dream scenario if they have to imagine it. It's like, I have a rig, you have a rig, and then we enjoy travel together.
Yeah.
But you have your own space.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
go to your own space.
It's like we have a 2-bedroom apartment.
Exactly.
Like
traveling wherever you need to go.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And again, like, dating and life on the road and single on the road it's not easy. It's not fun, but it's also like dating in general is kind of that exact same way. It's not easy and not fun. So it doesn't necessarily change. The pool's a little smaller.
And like logistically maybe more complicated.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And, fun, but complicated. More complicated for sure. Well, there you go. We'll talk about specific logistics. Question 5 is, what is the best place or craziest place you've had sex during your life on the road?
I'm interested to hear if I'm the only person to have this answer, but I just haven't.
You're not.
I'm not dating. I'm not having sex.
You're not the only person to answer that.
Yeah.
In that way.
Yeah. I just, I think moving into my vehicle was for me. And like I'm in a stage of my life where like if I'm gonna date, it's like to find someone to be my partner. I'm like not really at this moment like interested in just like flings, and so moving into my vehicle was very much for me and my mental health. And like dating someone or like trying to date didn't feel good for my mental health. And like I also, because I am looking for like a partner, like it doesn't feel like logistically possible to like find someone while I'm traveling. Because it's like, hey, I met the love of my life, but like I can't stay here.
Like, oh, by the way, I'm leaving. Exactly.
So it's never made sense for me to like get on a dating app. And I'd be interested in hearing what other like women are doing.
Well, it makes sense, and shout out to Jess because she's the other one who basically said, no sex in the van. Her response was, the suspension can't take sex in the van.
That's the other thing. I'm like, it would be so obvious, like awful.
It is what it is.
I can hear literally everything that happens in here because it's like canvas side, so I'm sure the same is true. And like,
outside.
So I just. Beyond the fact that like all of that, also logistically, I think would just kind of be a nightmare. Also, like my bed's right there, and I can't sit up in bed, so it would be kind of awful.
Well, it's not awful, but it's tricky. I'm with you. So shout out Jess, good answer, and yours is right down the exact same way, which is amazing. So totally can appreciate that. Question 6: how do you make money while living your life on the road?
I work full-time. I'm the assistant director of a nonprofit in Montana. So I have a salary. And I also have a small side job too. I help another business do their social media in Montana. And so it's a very like stable income. And as I said before, it's like a 9 to 5. I do have some flexibility. Like when it gets colder, what I'll do is like once the sun sets, it gets cold and I have to be in bed anyway, which is like at 6 or 5
right now.
And so what I'll do is like take a few hours off in the afternoon, like during this time when it's really like warm and sunny, and like go on a hike with Charlie and then work in bed when I have to be in bed anyway. And so I'll do that. But well,
kudos to the nonprofit for kind of letting you be remote and kind of live this life and do this. And again, it's the questions asked so others can understand that there's so many different ways to make and have income while living a life on the road. So you work a 9 to 5, you work for a nonprofit. Like, this is something that somebody maybe in that world never imagined possible. And so I love the fact that you can, easily say, this is what I do. I do it full time from the road, and it's possible. So.
And I mean, it's a small nonprofit, and I was already working remotely, but it's like definitely kind of a Montana-based job. And so I basically was like, hey, like, is this okay? Like, I'm still going to be remote, but like really remote. Like not in-state remote. And
and I think that goes to, again, why I asked the question, because I think a lot of people are stuck in these 9 to 5 jobs and they're unhappy. But if they just asked the question, they'd be surprised that, especially now that we've gone through COVID and employers now are changing how they look at, remote work and, work from home type situations. To where I think if people were a bit more bold not saying you're not by not asking, but at the same time, if you did, you might be surprised by their answer.
Yeah, like the answer is always going to be no if you don't ask.
Correct.
Yeah.
Exactly. I love that. And no issues. Let's talk about connectivity, because obviously being 9 to 5, you have to be dialed in for a fair amount of the day.
Yep.
Do you have Starlink?
Nope.
Okay. I love that answer. I'm really glad you said no. I would love you to get Starlink, so it makes your life a little easier. But, so you're reliant on hotspots in your phone and 3G, 4G, 5G networks.
Yep. So I have T-Mobile.
Okay.
And what I did was I got a modem and I got an extra SIM card.
Okay.
And put that into that little modem. And so if I have phone service, I have Wi-Fi basically.
Right.
And
which is a great system.
Yeah, and I do pick places based on service.
Yep.
Obviously, like I'd be able to pick more places that didn't have service if I did have Starlink, but I don't get paid very much in my nonprofit work. I get paid enough to live like this.
Yeah.
And that's enough for me right now, but Starlink is like definitely more of an investment, and my company wouldn't be able to like help me cover that. Like they help me cover my current system.
Okay, that's great.
But that's, and because like this is not the norm, like I think I'd feel bad being like, hey, can you also chip in a few $100 extra dollars a month?
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's completely fair.
Yeah.
But, and again, I love that you're making it work and you found a solution to make sure that you can continue to live this lifestyle.
Yeah.
So,
and it's never really, I've never had a problem with it really. On really windy days, it's maybe slow.
Okay. That's fair. Yeah. But you're obviously now choosing sites and choosing locations that is, cellular based.
Yeah. And honestly, it's so much easier than it probably like even a few years ago used to be.
For sure. For sure.
Like I honestly have better service out in the middle of nowhere here in Arizona and Utah than I did in town in Whitefish, Montana.
Yeah.
So like that's just an indication of like, it doesn't necessarily mean like a population means like better service.
Correct.
So.
Yeah. Well, and again too, I think this is just, Starlink has been a game changer for nomadic travel. That's a fact.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that, Starlink has only been around for a short period of time.
Yeah.
So like everybody was doing this prior and this is how they did it at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. So what you're doing is great and it fits perfectly in your lifestyle. So it allows you to be out here, which is the best part. Mm-hmm. Question number 7. Let's talk about the rig. What is your rig? Who built it? And why did you choose it to live your life on the road?
I have a truck that's a Ram 2500 with a Cummins engine, and I have a
diesel engine.
Yep.
Okay.
And I have a 83 Sunlight pop-up truck bed camper. Okay. And I actually bought them together.
What year's the truck?
A 2001.
2001. Okay, so slightly newer truck, slightly older pop-up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. And I bought them together, and so when I did realize I think I wanted to do like some sort of camper to live in, I was originally, I had a CRV at the time, so very low towing capabilities.
Correct.
And so I already knew that I was gonna have to buy a new car or truck in order to tow anything.
Okay, wait. So you said you bought them together, but you bought them together separately. You bought the truck and then you bought the camper?
No.
Or it was one rig?
So what happened was like I knew I needed to buy something that had towing capacity. So I was like, didn't know what kind of camper I want. I thought I originally wanted a tow behind. Okay. And so then you have like the question of like towing capacity, the weight of the ring. And so there was all this like math involved, and it was like a puzzle piece, like trying to buy something to get like, being like, okay, this truck is available, this camper is available, I need to buy them both at the same time, but I also needed a loan. And so that makes the whole thing longer. Yeah. And so this was listed together on Facebook Marketplace. Okay. And so I went, perfect. I went and saw it, and I was like, I love it. Sign me up. And he was really kind. He had other like people who were interested in who could have paid cash. Right. But he said that he remembers the first time he wanted to buy a vehicle, and that his like perfect dream rig, they like passed him up because he didn't have cash and needed to get a loan. And so he was really patient with me, and I ended up actually having to get a cosigner, which was crazy to me because the cost of this like monthly payment was less than my rent at the time.
That's funny.
And so I was like trying to be like, okay, like, no, I can pay for this. Like,
Right.
it's going to be literally half of my rent.
Yeah.
So therefore I can afford it. But banks are just awful.
They are.
And they want like 100%, even though my credit score is amazing.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, like this seems sketchy. You don't make a lot of money. You work for a nonprofit, like all this stuff. Like you have a lot of college debt.
Right.
So they're looking at me as a complete risk.
Yeah.
And it's just crap. Honestly,
Yeah.
banks suck. And so I had to get a co-signer, and then so that took longer.
Yeah.
And so anyway, but now I have the rig.
No,
and it
but
works out.
I love the story of the individual that you bought it from, him being just so kind in the process.
Yeah.
You know, and again, obviously somebody that has used the rig and is, you know, a fan of this lifestyle and or camping and or outdoors or whatever. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's nice to see that like he's kind of passing that along, you know, to you, which is amazing. So
Yeah.
you're good. You want to come over here? Come here.
I want to be there.
Or
in
you
the
just want to
center.
stay right on the table?
Yes.
You're good.
He loves sitting on tables.
Perfect. It's a good spot for you.
Yes.
So far, besides the window falling out or the latches on the pop top kind of being sketchy, no
Yep.
issues with the rig?
I wouldn't say that. It's old.
Yeah.
I have a laundry list of things that need to be
Okay. Addressed.
updated. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's just like one thing after that gets one thing fixed, and then another thing breaks, and you're just like,
Yeah.
this
Well, I
list
mean,
is never going to be zero.
I completely asked the question because I knew that was the answer.
Of course.
At the end of the day.
Actually, about 3 weeks into being on the road, my fridge broke.
Okay.
And, you know, this might be the next question, but this is probably my lowest point, was I already had some issues with the truck, the terminal. So the guy I bought the truck from was like a Mr. Fix-It himself.
Okay.
And so he did all of his own work, but that led to a lot of like jerry-rigging, and the terminals on my batteries were loose. And so I like wasn't getting enough power to like go uphill very well.
Okay.
And so that needed to be fixed. And so I was in St. George, Utah, like waiting for some parts. And that was going to cost quite a bit of money to get all 4 terminals just like really solid.
Yeah.
And my fridge broke. It was the original, so like I guess that could be expected.
Yeah.
Maybe, but it was a punch in the gut for me. Because it was like, that was going to cost $1,000. That was going to cost maybe $2,000.
Yep.
And it was like just less than a month. And I was like, I had a breakdown, cried a lot, ended up deciding not to replace my fridge. And so
Okay.
I lived without any sort of cold anything, not
Wow.
even like a cooler for a month. And then my body rejected that way of living.
Yeah.
Because I'm like the type of person that eats like a salad all the time.
Yeah.
And so then I got just a little like bag cooler, like a hiking bag cooler,
Yeah.
which I lived out of for about 6 months.
Okay. That's impressive.
And then I moved into just like a crappy like cooler and with ice that I had to buy every day. And in the summer I was like literally replacing it every day.
Yeah.
And then I just replaced I just got an actual like cooler style fridge that
Okay.
slides under my table.
Nice.
And it like is seriously life changing.
Game changing.
What I keep telling people is like, I no longer have to deal with soggy cheese. And that is just like the dream.
The best thing ever.
Yeah.
I
and
love it.
It's like amazing. I'm like, why didn't I do this sooner? And it's like, 'cause I really didn't think that my solar and like my electrical system could handle it.
Yeah.
And it can.
Doing just fine.
Doing great.
So, well, and again, too, I asked the question because it's an older rig, and older rigs get talked a lot about on this show. And I know, obviously, we just talked about like the financial situation to get the rig in general was a challenge and hard. And this is obviously what you could afford and makes perfect sense for your lifestyle.
Yep.
But you're now realizing because it's an older rig, you're having to dump some money into it.
Yeah.
And that's a challenge.
And it's interesting too, because you have like the vehicle and then the rig.
The rig, yeah.
Like, so sometimes you have to like trade off. Like,
Yeah.
for example, at the time, my fridge and my batteries needed work. And so like I needed to drive my vehicle
Yeah.
in order to be places. And so I decided to like put the money into that and not have a fridge.
Right.
And so it's just constantly a handoff
Yeah.
of like what you're going to repair.
Right.
And so at the time, a fridge wasn't the priority. And then after the summer, I was like, okay, now a fridge is a priority. And I
Yeah.
had saved up some money and got one. And
Well, actually, it's almost kind of like a little bit of a benefit. If you're going to do an older rig, this actually makes maybe more sense than an older van.
Yeah.
Because in an older van, like an older van breaks down, you're stuck. Like you have to take care of the vehicle. Like you have to be able to drive from point A to point B.
Yeah.
And then your home is kind of like, you know, in trouble. So at least with this, like you have some flexibility, some options. You could potentially drop the trailer or the camper if you had to.
I had to, yeah.
Live in it, fix the rig, fix the truck.
Yeah.
Like there's a little bit more flexibility. So I don't know. It's kind of an interesting thing because again, older rigs on the show, I ask lots of people, you know, obviously if you had the means and the ability to do so, would you buy an old rig? And most of the time the answer is no.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But again, you're making this work and it's perfect for you.
And there is something to be said though about older things because they're made differently than 100%. They are now. So like even if I were to buy basically the same thing but newer, I almost feel like it would be crappier because they make things so terribly now. So like
there's truth in that statement.
There's a handoff and
for sure.
Also the guy that owned it before me put in a lot of like care into it.
Yeah.
And he was just one of those people that like improve things just because he thought it was better, like not because it was broken.
Yeah.
And so he like did a bunch of stuff that like made me feel better about buying an older rig too because it was being cared for and then it was like reinforced in different ways.
Well, I think that's super important to understand as well. Like, if you're going to buy a rig, an old rig specifically, do your homework and like make sure that like you understand who's owned it, like what that owner has put it through. You know, don't just buy things like sight unseen, especially if it's an older rig. So, you know, you kind of had that understanding. It probably, you know, made you feel a little bit better that this guy really took care of this thing. And treated it with, you know, respect and used it well. So
and like pictures can be vehicles can be painted and the pictures look beautiful, but you can't go in there and touch the walls and be like, are any of these mushy? You know, like
as a photographer, trust me, I can make something look very, very pretty. Very easily. So
and like the pictures looked beautiful and like in itself, like in person, it was like still beautiful, but like definitely I'm like, oh, it's older than it looked in the pictures.
In the photos. Yeah, of course. 100%. Do not buy a vehicle unless you've driven it. Like go drive them, go see them, go stand in them, go walk around them. For sure. Especially an older rig. Especially an older rig.
Yeah, and that's a good thing. I drove this vehicle. He said there was nothing wrong with it, and I drove it, and I had a CDL before, and this thing, like literally, like.
Wait a second. You had a CDL?
Oh yeah.
In a past, like...
one of my jobs in Alaska required me to get a CDL.
That is amazing.
I drove around buses full of people, and I was like a guide tour for a lodge, and so I drive like from Cooper Landing up to Denali and back. I had a CDL, and when I went and drove this vehicle, the steering was like awful. Like I was literally like going like this to try to keep it center. And he's like, "Oh, my wife drives it like that too. Like I think you just like aren't used to it." I'm like, "Excuse me, I had a CDL. This is not how vehicles that are large are supposed to drive." So
that's
anyway,
a bold statement from the gentleman.
I loved him except for that.
And for that comment, of course.
And then I was like, I would like to take it to get looked at. It was $1,000 worth of repairs. And
to the drivetrain or to
so
the
like
to the
it also
column.
Helps. Like if you don't know stuff like that, like have someone go with you. Like
100%.
do not feel bad about asking for help with buying a rig.
Or just take it to a mechanic.
Yeah,
and let them go through it.
Never buy a rig without taking it to a mechanic.
For sure. Especially an older vehicle. Like just go have somebody.
So I was like, yeah, you are gonna pay for that, right? Like
that's amazing.
But he was like, I don't know if he was just used to it driving like that or what, but it was $1,000 worth of repairs just to get the steering to like, I literally thought I was going to crash into the other lane because I couldn't like keep it straight.
I mean, you just make them pay for it just for the comment alone.
I know.
Dick. Like, seriously.
No, he was super sweet other than that. I don't think he like meant it that way.
Yeah, he probably just said it. And,
but I did like stiffen and I was
you're like
feminism.
That's awesome.
How dare you underestimate me? I've driven like lots of buses. I was like, I've driven things much larger than this, and it did not drive that way.
That's
so thank
awesome.
you.
I love it. Okay, let's get inside the rig here. What is your best bathroom, number 1 or number 2 story from life on the road? First of all, do you have a toilet in the rig?
Technically, yes, but I don't use it.
Okay.
So really, no.
Cassette toilet?
Yeah, it's like, I guess that's what it is. It's like where you have.
I love that you don't know
really
what
don't
it
know
is.
because I was like, I'm never going to use that. Because
Amazing.
the like, I don't know. It like kind of grosses me out to like be doing that where like it's like next to my kitchen.
Is it just like a little small portable thing?
No, it would be emptied on the bottom there.
Oh,
you see that?
Yeah.
So I would just need to like empty it.
Can you pull it out? Like, is it removable?
It would be,
It's,
but
like,
I'd have
built
to like
in.
repair the floor.
Oh, okay, so it's kind of like built into it.
Yeah, it's one of, so I just don't know the name. You like put the blue tablets in and put water in.
Yeah, it's cassette.
Okay, yeah. So I obviously don't know anything about that because I don't use it. I think I've used it once in a like very bad emergency, and it was just I had to pee so bad, and I went to a gas station, and it was closed. I was like, no.
I have to pee.
Yeah, but I would
That's
say
awesome.
so. I use the Great Outdoors, and
Yeah.
I have a shovel, I have bags, I have a lot of different like emergency things, but I think my best story most recently was here in Arizona there's choyas. If you guys don't know what that is, they're lovingly referred to as the jumping cactus.
Jumping choyas.
Yeah, and so they have these big like nodes with like spikes that fall off of them, so they're all over the ground, and or if you just walk past one, they just stick to you so easily.
We'll throw up some photos of what jumping choya look like, but having somebody that is a landscape architect by profession, has lived and worked as a landscape architect in Arizona for almost 10 years. Jumping choya, people like laugh when I tell the stories of like what actually jumping choya do. You literally walk next to them or close to them, and they will find a way to get on your skin, to get on your clothes, to get on whatever, in your dog. Yes.
And that's where like the worst things is like Charlie had one on his paw, and he tried to take it out, and then his mouth got stuck to his paw because they're like porcupine needles. They like don't pull out easily.
No. And they hurt like hell.
Yeah.
Yes.
So anyway, I got into here when I like the first night, and it was after dark, and I never drive after dark, but I like knew this place very well, so I was like, oh, I know to park. And I had my like rain boots on, and like it was like, you know, my night clothes.
Night
so I
attire.
had my like rain boots and my sweatpants and my sweatshirt, and I just like needed to go out to pee. And I was like pretty close to someone else. I never parked this close to someone, and they were outside having a fire. So I like went behind my rig in a way that they couldn't see me, and I like pulled down my pants and like squat to pee, and I was like, it was on my boot, and so I literally sat like into it, and I was like, oh god. And I
was gonna ask you, like, you started the story, and I was like, please don't tell me you squatted on a jumping choya.
It was on my boot, so yeah, it was then stuck into my thigh ass area. And if I had my pants down, and so I was like, if I went back into my camper, the people who were outside having a fire would have a full view of my ass. And I was like, I was like squatting, I'm like, what do I do? Oh god. And so I was like, it's pitch black out, but like they're like right there, and I'm like, shit, I can't see.
Yeah,
and I'm
exactly.
like,
it's the worst spot to get. I mean, I can only imagine.
Because you have to like, if you do grab, you have to like do it really gingerly.
Yes, you cannot just grab these things. Again, we'll throw up a photo of like what the little like nodes, as I think you called it. Little choyas, they break off and they fall on the ground. There's like just a little ball, and if you grab this thing, it'd be worse.
Somehow
did you literally just pull it out?
I literally just pulled it out. I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, the other thing would be just to have been like, sorry guys. Like,
I have a jumping choya in my ass.
Yeah, my bad. But I literally was just like, I don't even think I had my headlamp on. So like, I was just like, couldn't see it. So I just pulled it out, threw it, and was like, bah!
Amazing.
And then like checked my thigh butt area to see if I had any needles.
Nice. I absolutely love it. Yeah, completely terrible story about going to the bathroom in Arizona. Please watch out for jumping choya. They are a legit kind of beautiful plant, but a hazard nonetheless.
Concern for sure.
Especially
for dogs.
Yeah, dogs. Like just in the last like couple days, like we've had 2 or 3 dogs paws. Be kind of eaten alive.
The best thing to carry around is those tongs that you would take like bratwurst off of the grill. And then you can just grab it and pull it off. That's what we started using.
That actually is a really good idea for sure. Makes perfect sense. Oh God, I'm still just picturing you squatting on a jumping choya. Oh, good Lord.
I don't even know how it got on my boot. Like, that's what I'm talking about. Who knows where it came from?
I mean, No. They literally, if you walk next to them, they will literally find your clothes.
Right.
They will find your skin.
And there was one, but like I was like, I swear to God, I didn't get that close to it. So that's how you're like, they just jump off the ground.
Jump off the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah, they literally, that's why they're called jumping cholla. And I tell people this all the time, like I grew up in the Midwest or the South, and my friends back there, and I'm like, jumping cholla, they literally leave the ground to your skin, to your boots, and they're like, no.
Yeah.
Like, well, yes, exactly
Pretty
what
much.
happens. Question number 9, what's the happiest and hardest moments during your life on the road?
The hardest, I think, would have been when my truck stuff was going on last year, and then my fridge broke, and it was just like, it felt like very like defeating.
Sure.
Especially I was so early on into it.
Yeah.
And I had also just like bought this rig and like I didn't clean out my savings. I left some of my savings for it.
But you spent a bunch of money for it.
Yeah, and I didn't expect to have to fix so many big things so quickly.
Yeah. Easily can be a defeating feeling at that moment.
And like it ended up all being fine, but it was just like it felt really hard, especially as a single person. Like you're not like you're the person dealing with everything. Like,
for sure.
And I would say in general, like that's the undertone of like the hardest moments as van life is being a single person. And when things happen, it's the like realization that you're the person that has to fix everything, and you're alone. Like not alone, like in life, but like it can feel like that sometimes.
Yeah, no.
And so I remember like being on the phone with my therapist and being like crying and being like, I'm tired of handling everything by myself.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like, and I was like, I don't want to be in a relationship, but I also like I'm like tired of
feeling this way.
Yeah, I'm tired of feeling so alone in like all these.
Yeah.
And this was like beyond van life too. It was like just in general life, but like it's hard in van life.
No, it's interesting that you say that, because it's something that people need to understand as they desire or they're researching or they have a goal to get into nomadic travel, is that you're going to have to learn to love to be alone. You're going to have to be comfortable with that, because it's going to happen 90% of the time.
Yeah,
you're going to be alone. And so to your point, like if you're having these feelings and you have this anxiety of being alone or whatever it is, pre-van life, it's only going to get worse post-van life.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, because that time alone, you know, is a very real thing, and you're alone a lot of the time.
A lot,
so,
yeah. I would say I'm very comfortable being alone now, like even more than before. I was pretty comfortable with it before, but now it's like, people are like, probably I get that question more than anything else is like, don't you feel alone? Aren't you lonely? And I'm like, well, sometimes.
The answer is always yes.
Yeah.
No matter what.
Like I'm not like immune to being lonely.
For sure. Well, and I also think that like, you know, if that answer is ever no, I don't know, that it doesn't feel right in nomadic travel. Yeah. Because that answer always should be yes, because you are alone so much of the time. And I want to make sure, and again, as this, show, we talk about it a lot, is the level of difficulty with van life and the level of stress and anxiety that goes along with van life is really high. Like this is not, as our friend right here parked coined the phrase, rainbows and kittens, Sierra, shout out Sierra. The life isn't rainbows and kittens, and the majority of the time it's not easy. It's really difficult. Now, again, we get to come to these beautiful places and it's quite amazing, and that's really the benefit. But the day-to-day life of a nomadic traveler is really hard. Yeah. And so dealing with that anxiety or that level of stress can sometimes be a challenge, for sure. Yeah. So I completely can relate to that as being your hardest. It makes perfect sense. Yeah. Especially when, again, like you said, traveling solo, you're the only person responsible. Yep. And so you got to figure out a way to deal with it. Yeah. But the flip side of that is you did. Yep. You're still here. You're still on the road. These things only make you stronger, and that's a good thing. Yep. And then my highest van life. Happiest. It can be highest. You can go either direction. Yeah. Let's see, happiest. I don't know. I think that for me with van life, it's been like a lot of small wins that feel like the happiest. Yeah. Like specifically here in Arizona, it's been like being able to count on the sun, which is the opposite of Montana. Yeah. And so last winter, that was probably the best thing. That was like,
there was one day that was like half of a cloudy day, and I was like, what in the hell? And so like that just shows like how frequent the sun is, and the fact that I could just like not plan my life around like the doom and gloom of like feeling like, oh, like what am I going to do if it's cloudy or whatever, like just knowing that like it was like not even a part of my like thoughts, like I just like could count on it. And that was just such a incredible feeling of like
getting to an environment that the sun was out all the time.
And also just like in that same vein of just like taking small things as just like huge triumphs and having like, I don't know, like noticing more small moments, I guess, like the way that the saguaros like light up pink at night when the sun is setting, or like how happy Charlie is, or like seeing him like get really like happy with the fact that there's like van lifers around, and like he's not usually a very social dog, and so just I don't know, it's just like
he's not a social dog, as he's been like the star of the show. So,
and so amazing. I don't know, it's just like all these small things, and like having the time to like notice them and appreciate them. No, I think that's very well said, and I do love that this lifestyle promotes that concept of slowing down, you know, and allowing you the space to take in your environment, take in the people that you're with, take in, you know, the scenery and the setting, and really appreciate it, you know, really appreciate the conversations you have with friends, really appreciate the environment that you're sitting in and parked in and sleeping in and enjoying your daily life in. And I think those things are very important, and also, you know, need to be thought about in such high regard, because they're really, you know, they're really kind of why we do this, you know, at the end of the day. I was recently talking to a friend about, so like I'm probably not going to live in this for a super long time. Like I really do crave like somewhere solid to land. And I don't necessarily know where that is right now, but even if I did, like I thought I did, and things are just so expensive right now that it's actually prohibitive of me moving into an apartment. And so like this is almost like, now it started off as like a thing I wanted, and I do still want it, but like now it's kind of, I'm forced to stay in it even if I didn't want to be. And so I was having this like hard conversation, being like, and I just feel so defeated that like, you know, the towns that I want to live in are so expensive now because of the housing crisis and all these external factors. And however, I'm still trying to be just so grateful for this opportunity, because I know that when I'm 80 or even 50 or whatever, I'm going to look back on this time of my life and be like, wow, like what an experience. And like, I experienced so much, and I was so grateful, and I was so happy. And so like, even in the midst of all that like disappointment and sadness, like being like, but wait, like it's still amazing. Like where I've landed regardless of that is still awesome. And just trying to still be really thankful for that. Of
course. And, you know, and again, too, I think anybody that's lived a life on the road or has experienced kind of this lifestyle of nomadic travel can relate to that. Like they can relate to the concept of being in a place that you feel so much kind of at home. And we say a place, it could be any environment, and you feel that depth of gratitude because of where you're at, or who you're with, or the conversations that you're having. And like you're referencing this hard conversation with a friend, but ultimately you come back to the idea of, I feel really good about that no matter what. Like I feel really good about where I'm at. So, you know, I think that's great. And that's, you know, I think truly why we do what we do, and this lifestyle is so amazing, because it really does allow you to kind of see that kind of concept of gratitude maybe more easily than, for sure for me, than living in a city or living in one standing location. You know, being able to travel and experience different things and experience different cultures and people and places, you really kind of widen your horizons a bit, and you know, that sense of gratitude comes much easier. So as a butterfly just flies right in between us. Yes, kind of couldn't have been more perfect timing, which I'm hoping that was on camera visually. That was amazing. Last question. In your own words, define #vanlife, and then provide a piece of advice for someone wanting to live a life on the road.
Hashtag?
I love to see everybody's face when this question gets answered because, you know, it's a cheeky question for a purpose, for a reason.
Yeah. So the concept of hashtag van life to me means like the gentrification of homelessness.
Okay.
And so I don't identify with it.
Yeah.
And I'm not a fan of it.
Yeah.
I use the term van life because in speaking to someone else, it's the best way to describe
Yes.
my home in under a few sentences.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
And I'll use it amongst other van lifers because
We're
I
experiencing
feel
the same
like,
thing.
yeah, exactly. But I think that it's gotten blown out of proportion on social media, and it doesn't really address the like privilege that really is needed to be able to do it.
Sure.
And honestly, you don't need anything more. Like you don't need a built out Sprinter van. You don't even need a camper really. Like
Right.
you could like literally live in like if I just had my truck and a bed, like I could just put in a mattress, right? And so like you really don't need a lot. And so
100%.
I don't want it to be like this privileged thing, but it has become this privileged thing where you have all these like really expensive build outs and it's associated with a lot of like, I don't know, people with money who are out here. I don't know. I have a hard time with it because it's like I'm in this culture and I'm living it, and also I don't identify with like what is probably thought of it like in general.
Hold on one second. There's a bee about to crawl under your face. It's okay. Like it's very nice.
I'm not afraid of it.
No, I know.
just want it to not be in my eye.
Yeah, exactly.
Hello.
I know. I'm literally watching it as you're answering this question, like crawl up your hair, and I was like, it's actually kind of really pretty. The sun's on it. It's like really nice, but I'm like, it's about to get to your face.
Should've been like
I
this,
at least
really.
like warn you about that.
Yeah. So I don't know. I have a hard time with like hashtag van life. I mean, I think that goes back to the question of like, how have I experienced other van lifers and my perception of it?
Sure.
Like, I think that speaks a lot to like my perception of it originally before becoming it. It's like, I want to do this for my mental health and for what my life needs, but I also don't want to be a part of the problem.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of like, you know, not treating land very well as well. Like, you know, we are definitely putting more wear and tear on public land because we live out here. And so I think it's just really important to recognize like the privilege of owning a vehicle and being able to do this and being able to work remotely and having the infrastructure to be able to do that.
For sure.
And also the fact that we have land which was stolen and we are now living for free because of that.
Yep.
And so there's just a lot of undertones of privilege and honestly white supremacist culture and so it's a hard position to like be a part of the culture and not also identify with it.
No, I think it's well said. I think it's important that those words are said and spoken in that way. So thank you for doing so. You know, it's one of those things where I love the fact that this community is, and diverse is the wrong necessarily term because I don't think it's as diverse culturally as it, you know, should be, right? But it's diverse in a sense that everybody has a very different background. You know, everybody comes from different places. Everybody has different economic backgrounds, you know, financial backgrounds. We're all coming from a different location. And then what I do like about the community is we all seem to love and respect each other for the most part, you know? So, you know, somebody could have a big, crazy, fancy rig. I am that person. Althea is, you know, obnoxious in many people's eyes. But I, you know, kind of did things backwards, or I worked very hard for many years, you know, in order to be able to, you know, afford and build her. Which again, I respect you and your rig, you know, just as much for being here today and having this conversation with me. And I love that, you know, to where we can have a conversation about this beautiful place that we get to park at and live our lives at. But I think ultimately we both agree on the fact that, you know, taking care of these lands that we do have an opportunity to get to enjoy is so, so important. And I think there are a lot of people that are coming into this lifestyle because of maybe what social media perpetuated or created that aren't taking care of this environment. And that is frustrating. And that's why part of the reason why I asked the question, because I don't like to say social media or the stuff you see on Instagram is fake. It's not fake. Those photos are real. Those locations are real. I say it all the time. I'm a broken record with this question. But at the same time, it's not our life. It's not how we live. And so I think kind of your sentiment and the way you answered that question is far more important and real in terms of what our daily life is like versus what is perceived online and in social media.
Yeah, and I think a great way to, what I have found myself doing is what I call like paying rent, and that's I try to like pick up garbage at all the campsites that I go to.
Yeah, of course.
So I'll like often carry around like a little bag with me, and as I'm like trolling around, there's just a lot of people use this to like shoot things and
glass.
Yeah, there's glass and like bullet casings and but also just like camping garbage. So like I pick up bottles and garbage all the time, and I'll like, I've actually carried out multiple large garbage bags full before, and so that's one way I like pay my rent. And then
super simple, leave no trace standards. At the end of the day, it's important.
Yeah, and then I've also donated to the specific native cultures that are who originally inhabited this land. Yeah. In order to like also pay rent. So
it's amazing.
Because I'm not like, I pay my car payment and that's my rent and like all of the like repairs, but to like pay tribute to the land that I get to park on for free.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think it's very well said, for sure. And the concept of privilege, it doesn't get talked about a lot in this community necessarily, but we are all extremely privileged to be able to do what we do. Yeah. And I think it's important to acknowledge that. I think it's important to talk about that and have that, to make sure to not forget that at the end of the day. And again, too, for the individuals, during the pandemic that are rushing into van life, glad you're a part of the community. We want this to happen. But at the same time, please understand that, acknowledging where you're getting to go and taking care of the places that you're getting to go is so important to this community, because if you abuse those, i.e. Sedona, they get closed and they get shut down, and therefore now we cannot enjoy them.
And honestly, like, I was kind of glad those got shut down because they were being abused.
100%. We were just at an event with the Good Vibes Collective in Sedona, right in those locations. And Chris and I had a very long conversation with the Forest Service employee who actually did the closures, who basically told us these places were getting abused. People were leaving trash. They were leaving feces. The concept of how to poop in nature, we're going to put a link down in the description. It's crazy how people don't know how to go to the bathroom in nature. And it's okay that if you don't, you're coming from a city, maybe you've never camped before. I think, and Sloan said this the other day in a conversation we had, pitching a tent is a prerequisite for van life. You have to have at least pitched a tent once on your own to be able to live into a rig. Which I was like, that makes perfect sense to me.
Like, garbage is one thing, but like human shit is a whole other thing. It causes diseases. Like, let's not do that. Like, I saw someone made a sticker and it was like something about like hashtag like stop surface shitting. And I was like,
yes, brilliant. Like, slow clap for you.
Yeah, like that's amazing. I want that sticker.
Exactly. How do I get that sticker?
And I like legitimately didn't know that was happening until I've like been in these crowded places, and I'm like, this is why they keep getting closed. Yeah, and that's exactly what's happening in Sedona. That was exactly what this gentleman from the Forest Service was telling us, is that, it was literally becoming a health hazard. It was becoming, a part of, the, just again, abuse of the land at the end of the day. And again, we want these spaces to remain open. We need these spaces to remain accessible. And when they're not, because of misuse or abuse, it causes problems for people wanting to really enjoy them. Yeah, I would hate for like van lifing to be the cause of land not being open for like recreation. Correct, exactly. Like, we want to be a part of the solution, not the problem. Yeah, so it's important to clean up where you are. Yeah, leave no trace. And then
a piece of advice you'd give somebody wanting to live this lifestyle, a life on the road?
I think it'd be really great if someone, like, depending on their availability or what they had available to them, like, trying it out first.
Sure.
Whether that would be just, like, going out for a couple weeks in their own vehicle without, like, a built-in rig or whatever.
Yeah,
like,
live out of your car.
Just live out of your car for a few weeks and just see the, like, how, like, laborious it is.
Or just purely challenging.
Yeah.
Hard.
In the winter, maybe. Like, during the time of year you're going to be doing it. I don't know. So just to see, like, all the challenges that you could come across and how you handle them. And to that point, too, like, everyone's rig is so different. It's very much, like, built around what you need, because they're all so minimal that it really is just, like, what you need.
Yeah.
And so if you're able to, like, have a rig, like, that you can borrow or rent for a few weeks to be like, oh, I definitely don't need that, or I definitely do need this, and I didn't have it, like, experiencing that, so that, like, if you were to build out a rig, like, it's going to be really expensive and time consuming. You might as well build it out the way you want it.
Exactly.
The first time.
Yeah.
And or if you buy something, like, already built, like my rig, which was, like, something I needed. Not everyone needs it to be that fast or that cheap. And so, like, what did I need? Like, exactly, you know? And so just that would probably be my, like, way to make sure you have the right rig that suits you.
I think it's really, really good advice. I mean, oftentimes guests on this show have talked about, you know, buying an old rig and then getting in it and realizing, oh, I want to do all these different things. Or I should have done this, or I wish I had that, or I really don't need this.
Yeah.
All of those things can get answered before you buy a rig if you do some research.
Yeah.
If you spend some time on the road a little bit. Somebody gave a piece of advice that said, if you can find a month or, 4 weeks or 8 weeks where you can just go and live on the road, it will tell you a lot about what you desire in a rig. And then if you have the opportunity to do it in a rig, okay, even better, because now you're going to get to learn how to live in that space.
Yeah.
And so you're going to learn, oh, maybe I don't need this, or gosh, I have to have this. And I think it's a great piece of advice. It's one of those things where people are jumping into it and not necessarily having a good understanding or have done the research in the past. And I don't know, it doesn't seem like a good idea.
Yeah, and in terms of jumping into it, it's like also I think examining why you're attracted to van life is probably a good first step.
Yeah.
Like, is it because of some like sunshine, rainbows, and kittens like reality image that you have of van life, or is it like an actual need?
Yeah.
And I just like, I don't know, I just feel like if, not that I can tell anyone what to do, but like, I don't know, having like a good reason to do it for themselves, like any reason is a good reason, but like, I don't know. That's, I think, another thing to do before getting into van life is like really analyzing it.
Yeah, I think it goes back to preparation. You're preparing, what you need and want to live in a rig, you're preparing your mind mentally to be able to do so. At the end of the day, and it has been said on this show over and over and over again, whereas if you're kind of like, I think it'd be a good idea, but I'm not sure, don't do it. Just be patient and wait till the moment you're really excited and committed to, like, again, you've been thinking about this for years. You've been exposed to nomadic travelers. This has been in the back of your mind. And all of a sudden it got to the point where you're like, yes, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And then you went for it.
Yeah.
And I think until you're at that point where you're like, yes, this is exactly what I want, just wait.
And even at that point, you don't need a fancy rig. Like,
Correct.
you can literally live out of your
100%.
Prius. We know
100%.
people, we can live out of your Subaru. Like, there's plenty of ways to live in your rig. Like, you don't need a fancy build out.
Exactly. But it's still about the idea of, I'm excited to go live on the road.
Yeah.
I'm excited to be a part of this nomadic community and to experience things that I've never experienced before. And that's the point in which then you go. But until you're ready for that moment, until you're really 100% committed, just be patient. Because if you're thinking about it, continue to do your research. Continue to figure out exactly your needs and your wants and your desires, and then that moment will come to you. Because if you're willing to, like, at least explore that idea, it'll eventually get to you. You'll eventually get to that point where you're like, okay, I'm ready. Like, let's go.
Yeah.
So that's really all I have for you.
Great, because it's time to go for a hike.
That's
Everyone's preparing to go for a hike right now.
That's right. Like the camp is ready to go for a little walk, so
Yeah.
we are going to go join them. So thank you so much for doing this.
You're
I
welcome.
really appreciate your time.
Yeah.
You were so good. You were
you
so
wanted to go
good.
for a hike
She's like,
too?
I'm ready to go for the walk. He
Okay.
says I'm ready to go.
Yes.
Okay. We will see you guys on the next episode. Thank you so much for watching, and yeah, we're gonna go for a hike.
Yay!
This is always my worry is audio.
Do you want me to test 1, 2, 3, testing?
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, it's recording. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate
I
it.
have to go pee in the bushes. You can use that. If you
Yes, that will 100% B-roll. We're gonna avoid jumping Choya for sure. That will be in the outtakes for sure.
Sweet.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Charles, let's go. Grab my garbage.
Yeah, exactly. Leave no trace.